Okay, interfaces and type aliases. So in TypeScript, interfaces and type aliases offer almost the same functionality. In this video, we'll explore that idea. So an interface type is a structure used for type checking. An interface type defines the properties and types an object can have. The difference between an interface and a type alias is the syntax, and the type aliases don't support declaration merging. I will show you this, and your IDE IntelliSense may also show them differently. Okay, so make sure your code looks like how it was at the end of the last lesson, in case you did some experimenting. Okay, so you can use that icon to copy to clipboard. Now, in the last lesson, we saw that we can indicate what types a parameter should be. So string, number, for example, we could say, call it a Boolean as another type we could use, or an object. But once we start using objects, it can become a little harder to write. For example, you could say needs to be something that looks like CUZ. This is another syntactic variable. CORGE is a number. Shift-Alt-F, and you can say my attribute I'm passing into my method must conform to that. That becomes quite hard to read. We can actually neaten that up by creating interfaces or type aliases. So instead of doing that, I'm going to create an interface and I'm going to call it QUUX. So home, just add some there. Here, interface QUUX and some brackets like that. So that's another meta-syntactic variable. Doesn't mean anything. It's just a word to use. Okay. In that, I'm going to describe a QUZ as a type of string and CORGE as a type of number. Shift-Alt-F like that. Now, my foo method needs a CUUX, and it's an interface. And that's what the interface consists of. Two properties called QUZ and CORG. So down here, the error message, argument of type string is not assignable to a parameter of type QUUX, because I've said down here that when you call the method, the type needs to be a QUUX. So down here in Baz, I can now create QUUX, and that is an object that consists of a QUZ, and I can say it's ABC, and the CORGE being 1, 2, 3. Shift-Alt-F to format. That's good. Okay, so that's now valid. So Baz now complies with the interface QUX because it has those two properties, QUZ and CORG. Okay, let's see how that compiles. So TSC command foo ts, and that's okay, and we can run it. Node foo.js, enter, and outputs hello object. Okay, now down here where I'm returning hello bar, which is actually this object here, console log isn't going to print out the parameters of bar for us just like that, but because bar is a QUX, our IntelliSense, when we press the dot, is going to give us the parameters that we can use. So I'm going to print out QUZ plus two of those to add a space plus bar.corg and press tab and finish. Now, if I compile that and run it, it now prints hello ABC 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's quite a simple interface. Now, also, we could create a type alias. So instead of writing the word interface, we can write type, but then you've got to put an equal sign there. And that is pretty much a different syntax, but it works in exactly the same way. Control S, so we can see foo needs a QUX, and bar, which is a QUX inside this method, has these two properties. So in this case, whether you use interface or type, doesn't really matter. It's only very simple what we're doing here. But one of the benefits of using type in this version of TypeScript and the IDE, these things might change in the future. When I hover over QUX, it just outlines what the properties and types are of that. If I was to use an interface and then get rid of that equals sign, hovering over QUX doesn't really give me this extra information. So in this example, type is a little bit more informative to use, a bit more helpful. But another difference between interfaces and type aliases is that you may want to do what's called declaration merging. So if I copy that and create it again, so redeclaring it QUX, but in the first declaration, I'm just declaring the QUZ property, and the second one, I'm declaring the CORG property. Control S, and that's okay. So those two declarations have been merged, and that's what you could do with interfaces. So bar, dot, and there we go, there's the two properties there. But you can't do this when you create a type alias. So if I just made that type and then put an equals there and did the same thing on the next one, like that, it says duplicate identifier QUX. And down here, it's gotten even more confused. So if you ever find yourself wanting to do declaration merging, then use interfaces for that. Okay, but I'm going to put that back to the way it was, like that, and just use the single declaration. Okay, another thing too, interfaces and type aliases are not JavaScript. This is TypeScript code. When we compile this, for example, I'll compile it again and look at the JavaScript version, the interface information is not there. And once again, that's because JavaScript is dynamically typed. You can pass anything into a method or a function, even if the method had required no parameters. Now, that makes JavaScript incredibly versatile, but it also makes it very easy to make unforeseen mistakes that you won't notice until you actually execute the program. And then even so, it can be very difficult to debug. So that's why using a TypeScript layer over the top of your code while you develop your code gives you these extra tools that you can use just to prevent some of those unforeseen JavaScript errors. Anyway, now also another interesting difference between types and interfaces is if I make this a type again, type equals like that, and I forget to add Corge123 down here, Shift-Alt-F, Control-S. If I hover over that, it's telling me property Corge is missing in type. We get the word type there, but required in QUX. Okay, if I make that an interface and get rid of that equals sign, Control-S, the error message is exactly the same. It says property Corge is missing in type. It doesn't say missing in interface, it just says type, as you can see. So you can see that they are very similar even behind the scenes, except for very few details that you may never actually experience from day to day, but they do exist, such as the declaration merging. And also another thing too, in the last video when I told you that it's often just useless to also assert the type when I declared and instanced my variable constant here, like so, it moves where the error message is shown. So now when I hover over Baz, it's telling me Corge is missing from the type. So in this case, asserting the type here gives some benefit. So once again, if I just take that away, the error message has been moved down to this point here. So property Corge is missing in type. If I put it back, Control Z, the error message is now here. So seeing the same error message is just in a different place. But even so, TypeScript can cope without the need of doing that. It's automatically inferred. And we can see here that the type that was automatically inferred in this line is not compatible with the method down here. So we can still just add this back, Corge123, Shift-Alt-F, and it's good again. But if you did do QUX there, Shift-Alt-F, you would know when writing this particular line that you'd forgotten to include Corge. So then you could do that, C-O-R-G, and the IntelliSense helps you out a little bit. There, Shift-Alt-F. Okay, very good. Type aliases and interfaces are TypeScript code. You won't see those in the JavaScript, but they help you to make the TypeScript code that you're writing more precise and in effect more robust.